Welcome in this new video of the House of Asian Cinema. Yes, a new video after more than 1 year with nothing. A video which has been motivated by the release of the new Tsui Hark, Legend of the Condor Heroes, the Gallants. You may not be aware, but just 2 years ago now, I've released a biography of Tsui Hark, so I feel like I've become his semi-official biographer, and so it is kind of my duty to review a new Tsui Hark film. Just a very quick update about the book, actually. So the book has been released in France and so far is only available in French. But I have actually finished translation in English. I've included actually the new film, The Legend of the Condor Heroes. So what I'm going to say here in this video will be in the book in English when it will be published. But it's still going to take at least a few months for me to have a final draft, because since I've released the book in France and the time I've been working on this English version, I've done a few new interviews with people who have worked with Tsui Hark, and I want to include those interviews in the book. So I need a little bit more time in order to transcript the interviews, to choose what to include in the book, and so on. So consequently, it will take me a little bit more time to have really a final English draft I'm fully happy with, but basically 90–95% of the work has been done. So as a matter of fact, if you know publishers in your country, meaning I mean English-speaking country, obviously, so it has to be the UK, the US, Canada, Australia. So if you know publishers who are potentially interested in publishing a biography of Tsui Hark in English, it won't be the first one in English, but I dare to say it's going to be the most complete one. And I have some reviewer from the English-speaking world who also are able to read French, who seems to think so. So that's a real pleasure. So if you know publishers who are interested in such a book, please let me know in the comments, and I will certainly go to check them, to contact them and see if we can have a deal and have the book published by them. So that's it, but now I'm going to talk about Legend of the Condor Heroes, the Gallants, so the new film of Tsui Hark, which has been released a few weeks ago now for Chinese New Year. Chinese Legend of the Condor Heroes, the Gallants, is obviously an adaptation from a very famous book by author Jin Yong. Jin Yong, is there really a need to introduce him? Well, I'm going to do it anyway. So Jin Yong is arguably the most famous, the #1 wuxia writer, the writer of this kind of swordsman stories. When it comes to the modern, the new school of wuxia, because there have been many books about wuxia which have been written originally. We can even go back to the water margin, but there is this new school which happened during the second half of the 20th century with different writers, but Jin Yong being certainly the most famous and now the most acclaimed. And this Legend of the Condor Heroes obviously had been adapted many times in TV series, in films, and Tsui Hark himself was no stranger to adapting Jin Yong, because he had done a great job, in my opinion, as a producer and sometimes director with his Swordsman series. So Swordsman, originally a project started by King Hu, you see the poster there actually, which he ended up taking over and finishing, and then Swordsman 2 by Ching Siu-tung, and Swordsman 3, The East is Red, by Ching Siu-tung and Raymond Lee. And of course, but even if Ching Siu-tung and Raymond Lee were really directors of the film, I mean, they have the mark of Tsui Hark. And I thought he did a really good job with those films. I love the Swordsman trilogy. What is interesting with this new adaptation of Jin Yong, this adaptation of Legend of the Condor Heroes, is that it's actually the favorite wuxia story of Tsui Hark. We can say it's a personal project, a pet project in a way. and it's something which he has developed the idea from the mid-80s, during the time where he was mostly a producer, when he was going in all kind of directions, doing all kind of films. He started to think seriously about doing an adaptation of Legend of the Condor Heroes. I know that during the early 90s there had been some attempts to write a script of this adaptation. One was made by Hansen Chan, who was mostly associated with the Once Upon a Time in China series, and another one by Charcoal Tan. But the project was never fully developed for a simple reason. Well, there may have been other reasons like budget and stuff, but the main things which seems to have condemned the project to never been fulfilled was that Jin Yong didn't want to give the rights of adaptation to Tsui Hark. Jin Yong didn't like what Tsui Hark did with his Swordsman series, so he didn't want to see Tsui Hark doing other adaptation of his books, and so that lasted for quite a while. But of course, with Jin Yong passing away and the rights of his work belonging to different person, it seems to be a mess, the rights of adaptation for Jin Yong. Well, finally Tsui Hark managed to get them and be able to fulfill this long project and to be able to do this adaptation of Legend of the Condor Heroes, released in 2025. And actually, when I went to interview him for the book in 2018, he was already seriously working about this adaptation. I was able to have a glimpse of one or two concept art on some computers about the film, and at the same time they were already training some young actors to be to work to appear in the film. I don't think when they were working on it at the time they thought it would take 7 more years for the film to be released. I think they had more in mind, maybe to 1 or 2 years, but then COVID and probably some other difficulties made it impossible, and it's only now that he was able to achieve this long-term project. And you may not know, you may not be aware of it, but I'm not that fond of the Tsui Hark since he has relocated in mainland China. Obviously, I think his golden age is the same as Hong Kong cinema during the 80s and 90s. But since he has moved to China, since he has done this choice of being mostly in Beijing, I think his movies have suffered in in this relocation and are not as creative, are not as touching as they could be before. So when I saw him do this new project, I was, on one side, I was not so thrilled because I've been fairly disappointed about his latest film for the most part, and at the same time it's also a Jin Yong adaptation, and I'm going to do a confession, which I think I may have done this confession already before, but anyway, I'm going to redo this confession again, which is I'm not fond of Jin Yong books. I know that's not something we are supposed to say, but from what I've read of him, and I must confess I haven't read all the book he has written, but from what I've read, I can see that the themes that he has doesn't really correspond to what I like. I'm not very fond of the way he's always using ethno-nationalist kind of themes. I find it a bit dubious about what he tries to express there. I'm not very fond of the way he describes female characters who are always secondary characters compared to the hero. They all become in love with the main character, and it's more like a fantasy of the male writer to me, who wants to have a harem of beautiful girls who all fall in love with him and who have no personality except the fact that they love him. That's it. So I find it extremely frustrating on that, and at the same time the way he builds his story for me, there are a lot of deus ex machina or narrative choices which are just too easy or too clumsy to my taste. I know I'm saying something which we should not say. I mean, Jin Yong has to be always revered as this god of wuxia fiction, but truth is, when you read it, and in my case, when I read it, I wasn't really that convinced by his stories. So seeing Tsui Hark adapting Jin Yong was not necessarily something I was very thrilled by, but at the same time I also knew that he had done the Swordsman series, and I love the Swordsman series, so I knew he was able, if he wanted, to take some elements from Jin Yong as a basis, but at the same time to put his own obsessions, his own ideas, to put his visual style as well, and so he can really transcend the original material and do something much better, in my opinion. So there was also that. And also another thing, which is part of the specific environment of the Chinese film industry. The Chinese film industry, by definition, is very hard environment to evolve in. You have a lot of political decision to make, because that's how it works in China about cinema. And in the case of Tsui Hark, he had made he had participated in the making of the two films about the Battle of Lake Changjin, those big military blockbuster about the PLA and their fight in Korea during the Korean War. And he had made those films big success, big commercial success. So thanks to that, we could assume that the censorship would be a bit more lenient toward him and would give him a bit more leeway compared to other directors. So when I went to see the film, I really had this kind of conflicting emotions in me. On one side, there is the fact that it was a Jin Yong adaptation, which is not a good source as far as I'm concerned. There is the fact that the latest films made by Tsui Hark hasn't been great artistic success, in my opinion. But at the same time, there was the fact that he already had made something good out of Jin Yong stories. The fact that it was a personal project, and the fact that he had more leeway compared to some of his other productions. So at the same time, even if I was worried about the final result, I was also hoping that he would be able to do something great, especially because it's also a return into the genre of wuxia, and Tsui Hark is arguably the master of wuxia Pian. So he should have been able to do something good. And I'm using should because, unfortunately, I don't think that the legend of the Condor heroes, the Gallants, is a success, an artistic success. It's actually a big disappointment for me, and I'm really sorry to have to say that, because I would love to say that it was a great film. Tsui Hark is the best. I mean, he's still a great director. There is no worry about that. But this new film, unfortunately, is not to the level of what we should expect from him. So why is that? I think we can already. I already guessed that it was not going in the right direction with the way the film started. So we have a very long prologue, a very long introduction of about, I would say, something like 20 minutes, which basically sums up the whole story of Legend of the Condor Heroes. And by doing that, it shows that, unfortunately, Tsui Hark is not going to do what I hoped he would do, which is to completely betray the original Jin Yong story and just use some elements, some characters, and do his own thing. But that, on the contrary, he's going to be very respectful, very faithful toward the original Jin Yong story. And as I explained, that's not necessarily a good thing for me. And that's also a problem in the sense that the film has basically 3 different storylines which interact with each other. And the emotional core of the film is the love story between the 2 main characters, Guo Jing and Wu Huang. And those characters are in love. They are in love, but during the whole film they are going to look for each other because they have been separated for what I consider a very artificial reason. And so the real love story, when the character meet each other, when they fall in love, when they declare their love to each other, when they declare that they are going to stay with each other forever, then the incident which leads to their separation, which in my opinion is very artificial, as I said. So all this is in the introduction. So it's basically not enough time to really create a bond or an attachment between the characters, and for the audience, in my case me, and I'm afraid it may be the same for you, to create some connection between the characters, to really believe in the love story which is presented here on the screen. And as the movie is based on that relationship a lot, then later in the film we have a love triangle which takes a lot of time in the story. I was never really touched by this love story, and I was never really that interested in what was going to happen, especially as you know that the third girl is not going to get the hero. So you never really feel for that, you never really believe in the love story, and you never feel like this love story is really in danger. So that's a big problem for me. Then what do we expect when we see a Tsui Hark film? I would synthesize that into three main ingredients. The first one is characters which are visually striking and which have some kind of relevance to the world, where we can analyze their behavior and see that as something more of a more general human quality or archetype in a way. Then the second element is action. Obviously, with Tsui Hark, the action has to be over the top. He's always pushing the limits. That's really one of his stylistic mark. And at the same time, the third element, which we can expect from a Tsui Hark film, is the very creative and innovative direction. And I'm afraid to say that those ingredients are not much present in this Legend of the Condor Heroes, the Gallants. They are not completely absent. And when I say I'm very disappointed, I also want to emphasize that the film is not a complete disaster. It's not a film you will hate. It's just that it's very conventional. And that's not a good thing to say of a Tsui Hark film, that it is conventional. So to get back on the three main ingredients I've just explained here. So the first one, characters who are really striking and memorable. Unfortunately, they are all a bit transparent here, and they are all very stereotypes. The only one which is a little bit interesting, a little bit more interesting than the others, is the main antagonist, whose name is Wu Yongfeng, nicknamed Venom West, who is played by Tony Nankarfai, so that's always a pleasure to see him here. And indeed, when he is introduced at the beginning of the film, he is shown as this kind of very cruel, evil and powerful bad guy, and the introduction is quite good. You really like the way he is, and you really think, oh, this guy is going to be quite a great villain. But actually not so much, because during the rest of the film he ends up always being fooled by the heroes. He's always beaten when he's fighting, while he's supposed to be like this great martial artist who is almost on the verge of dominating, of mastering this secret martial art, on being basically the master of the Jianghu, the master of the world in a way. So he is supposed to be a real threat, but he's always losing, and he's always with the same guys, the same henchmen. He has like 3 guys with him, and a 4th which is more like his right-hand man. And they're always following him, so they're always on their horses, those 5 guys in total. And when you are this supposedly super strong bad guy. I mean, you are not supposed to be always on your horse with your pitiful soldiers and always trying to look for the heroes and never managing. I mean, the more the story progresses, the more foolish and the more ridiculous it looks, and it becomes almost like a parody near the end, and that's a problem, obviously, for a bad guy who is supposed to be that striking and memorable. It gets a little bit better at the very end of the film, in the final confrontation between Guo and him. Then he gets back a bit more to his a very bad guy charisma, but especially because of the martial art technique he's using also. But that's too little, too late to really save the character, in my opinion. At the same time, as I said, you also want some over-the-top action. And once again, you have a little bit of that in the ending, in the final of the film, but the rest of the film doesn't have that much memorable action. It's very predictable. There is maybe one scene when there is a fight with a guy who is using snakes and poison against some Mongols and the hero Guo, which is okay, which has a bit of the Hark style, but the rest of the film not so much. And once again, we are dealing with a more than 2 hour long film, so when you have basically just 2 action sequences which are a little bit interesting, that's not enough. And especially not when you are dealing with Hark. I mean, you expect better than him, better than that from him. And the same goes for the direction. I mean, the direction, there is nothing wrong or nothing bad with the direction, but it's just very basic. There is no very impressive tracking shot or aerial shots or whatever. I mean, he has made a specialty of this kind of very mobile camera, but you don't have much of that here. And as I said, the result at the end seems very conventional. The story is conventional, the way it's treated is conventional. There is money, so you can see that there have been some care put into the costumes and on the special effects and stuff, but that's just not enough. That's what you expect from basically any Chinese blockbuster. And once again, you expect more when you are dealing with Hark. Another example of the disappointment are, for example, the big battles. So you have, once again, those kind of huge armies, which is a kind of a characteristic of this kind of historical Chinese films. But they are really shown the same way as in many other Chinese blockbusters, so it's a lot of digital effects, and you have those 2 armies which rush into each other, and then it becomes a big melee, and that's something I find very annoying. It's so stupid. I mean, there are strategies when the armies fight against each other, even during that time, probably maybe even more during that time that nowadays. Well, maybe not, but anyway, there are strategies. So there is never this kind of we just rush into each other and it becomes a big mess. No, that's a convention from films, and it's a convention which has to stop, in my opinion, and to do something a bit more exciting and a bit more relevant to the reality. And it's even more frustrating to see Hark do that here, that you can see that sometimes he tries to inject a little bit of strategy in the battles, but it's just a very small amount, and it made even more frustrating by the ending. During the credits, which by the way are unreadable. It's wall of text on wall of text. It's atrocious. I don't know who did that, but whatever. But during the credits, you also have some tactical demonstrations which are shown. And you don't know why. There is absolutely no reason to have those kind of tactical examples. So you have some kind of drawing where you see where the troops should be and what is going to happen in order to trap the enemy and something like this. And then you have a bit of a small demonstration of that. So that's during the ending. But why? First, why do that? Because it's not a film about strategy in general, and why put it at the end? Why not include it when there are indeed those kind of big armies fighting against each other? It makes no sense. It's a very weird choice, which I'm still puzzled about to this day. And so there are a lot of things like this, which makes this Legend of the Condor Heroes, the Gallants, a real disappointment. And it really cost me to say that, because obviously, having spent several years of my life working on Tsui Hark, having been able to interact with him, I mean, I really love the guy, I really love his work, and I really hope that any film he does in the future will be great films. But this Legend of the Condor Heroes was indeed a big disappointment. And it makes me wonder if Tsui Hark is able to really do a creative and artistically interesting film in this context. It's a fact that the environment of the Chinese film industry is extremely tough, very hard. It's very difficult to be original and to be able to express yourself fully. So I'm starting to think that it's basically impossible. And even Tsui Hark, with all the talent he has, cannot really thrive in this environment. And so I'm wondering if, given that he probably doesn't have that many films left in him, this Legend of the Condor Heroes is supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be a trilogy, and you already have some kind of teaser at the end also of the first one. Yes, during the credits you have those kind of strategic demonstration, and you also have a teaser for the next episode. But to be honest, if Tsui Hark just stopped there and didn't care about doing the rest of the story of the Legend of the Condor Heroes, honestly, I would be completely fine with it. I don't really want him to keep going in this direction after this first episode. And so I'm starting to think that maybe he should go back to Hong Kong, do something maybe with a smaller scale, something very personal, and I think it would probably be more interesting than what he is currently doing in China. That's just my opinion, and actually I expressed this opinion to him directly. He seems fairly interested in the idea, but will he really do it? I'm really not sure. In any case, so as I said, Legend of the Condor Heroes, the Gallants, the return of Tsui Hark to the world of wuxia is unfortunately, and I really emphasize that, unfortunately, very unfortunately, a disappointment. And now I'm going to do a very quick update about the channel, because as I said at the beginning, obviously there haven't been any video for quite a while. So why is it the case? It's not that I don't have things to say or do, it's just a matter of time management. It happens that I'm actually extremely busy with my other activities related to Hong Kong cinema, being writing books, being doing special features for Blu-ray and DVD. And because of that, I basically have no more time to do video for YouTube. To do a video for YouTube takes a lot of time, and if I do more, if I do like I did before, I basically do not have time to do the other special features. And the reality of the business is that special features pay much better than YouTube. So from this point, it's very easy for me to decide what I should do. So from now on, probably for quite a while, I will keep concentrating on doing special features. You can find some of my interviews with people from the Hong Kong film industries, from publishers like 88 Films, Eureka Entertainment, Canny Releasing, Vinegar Syndrome sometimes, and also from Australia, Imprint Asia. So that's a lot of work, and there are also some companies in France. So as you can see, I have my hands full right now. Having said that, I don't want to just kill the channel and to see it disappear. So I may pop up sometimes when I feel like I have something interesting to say, when I feel I have something worth to say. or if there is a subject which I really want to share, I really want to express some ideas about it, it's not impossible that I would try to spare the time to do it, and a video like this would appear on the channel. But I have to be honest, it's probably not going to be often, if not anything at all, until my other activities related to Hong Kong film starts to decrease. So for now, the channel will be in semi-hibernation, and we will see in the future, but I hope at some point I will be able to invest a bit more time and energy in it. And I hope you will remain subscribed to the channel, and at some point there will be some good surprises. So hopefully I will see you again very soon on this channel or in other formats, and until then, please take care.